in order to, make a regularity real, you're able to test it. You're able to observe it.
You're not understanding. Okay, testing would presuppose the regularity of nature. You can't
How
test the you can't test the regularity of nature. You can
why
test
wouldn't you be able to
instances
test it? Okay.
because testing presupposes that there are regularities in the world that are real to begin with. Otherwise, testing would be meaningless. So
Wouldn't you be testing
I'm
between
asking you.
regular
Listen,
and
you see what you're
irregularities?
listen. What you're confusing is empirical endeavors in attempting to uncover specific regularities. But the question is, are those regularities are they instituted and secured by something that they continue, or is the apparent regularity just simply spontaneous happenstance? So, for example, if I roll the dice 3 times in a row, do the 3 sevens necessitate that the dice are weighted to come up seven, or was it happenstance that they came up seven?
I'd say it was happenstance.
Okay, now if you see any number of similarities consecutively or chronologically, how many similarities have to occur in a row in any time span that the similarity is necessitated as opposed to its happenstance?
Um, what, more than 50%, I guess?
Is that your
More than half
assertion?
the time? More than half the time. That's why we have the, most of the time.
More than half the time.
In order to make it something a commonality, to make the assertion that this is a
Yeah, I don't think you're
regularity,
really under. I don't
they
think
have
you're
to be more than
understanding.
50%.
Where'd you get that from?
That's just science.
Dude, you're talking to a 6-year-old man. I was studying science before your dad even had a sparkle in his eye when he met your mother. Okay?
Okay. So then
Show
what
me,
would
show me, show me, show me where science says if there's a regularity 50% of the time, but 50% of the time it's not regular, that therefore the continuity is dictated by something. Where
I
does
think
science
you're
say that?
I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Oh, no, no. Quite the reverse is true. You're not understanding. What dictates that the uniformity or the regularity of nature is real? In order to say that it's real, something must be imposing and sustaining it. Otherwise, it's indistinguishable from spontaneous occurrence. Are you using probabilistic reasoning?
Probability, then yeah.
That
Yeah.
an extreme series of similarities, same event, same event, same event, same event, that at a certain point you're reasoning that it would be so improbable for chance or happenstance to produce the chronology of continuity. Therefore, there is something that necessitates that. Is that your reasoning?
You said what was that the tail end of that?
Yeah. Are you reasoning probabilistically that any series of consistencies over a time period must be considered the product of necessity versus chance due to the improbability of chance producing the consistency?
I guess so. I think if
Okay,
you're
we'll get
explaining
well.
it
Well,
correctly.
guess what? That conclusion is not logically necessitated
And why would that be the case?
because probabilistic probabilities don't necessitate. Okay,
They okay, when you say don't necessitate, what are you exactly are you meaning? Are you using
right?
the same
Okay,
dice say are you using the same dice
can
expression
I
as in
listen? Okay, let me try to explain it to you. Um, is it impossible for me to roll sevens twice in a row?
is it impossible? No.
Okay, how about 3 times?
No.
How about 10 times?
Okay, wait, yeah, you're gonna go and say, of course
No,
it's
no, no.
not
Listen,
impossible.
listen, listen. Don't interrupt me. Okay. Is it impossible? And I want you to answer the question, not something semi-related. Is it impossible for me to roll 10 times in a row?
Not impossible.
Okay. How about 20 times?
Not impossible.
100 times?
Not impossible.
1,000
You're
times.
gonna keep going up, but it's not impossible.
Okay, 1,000,000 times.
It's not impossible.
Good. Therefore, when you use probability, you can't logically necessitate that necessity is behind the continuity as opposed to happenstance. All you can just simply say is, I choose to believe in necessity due to the improbability.
But I was never arguing about a probability of something happening.
Okay, do you believe that the continuity of existence is by necessity, or is it just spontaneous happenstance?
I think it's spontaneous happenstance.
Okay, good. Then you can't appeal that past consistencies will continue into the future, or generalize it. That's how things are. All you can just simply say is there are past similarities.
You can use those past similarities to then come to a conclusion of a percentage of something happening.
No, that's false.
That's the whole point of
That's
probability.
begging the question. Okay, you
How would
see,
that
because inductive reasoning only works is if you first presuppose the regularity of nature. Okay, you can't use inductive reasoning to establish the regularity of nature. If you already presuppose the regularity of nature and then you use inductive reasoning, then you can make probabilistic declarations because you've already established that some things are static while other things are dynamic. Is there
how would
anything
you
that,
Okay, go
listen,
ahead.
is there anything, okay, do you understand the difference between static and dynamic? Static is what does not change, dynamic is what does change. So when we make probabilistic evaluations, we only do so based upon the background information of what's static along with what is dynamic. What is it that is necessarily static, sir?
Um, let's see. That's more of like a metaphysical kind of thing. Usually, so I don't think that.
Is there anything that is static in the past, into the present, and into the future?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Then you lose your ability to invoke the uniformity of nature. And if you assert something that implicitly presupposes a uniformity of nature, you're contradicting yourself. So when you were talking about the behavior of lions, you were implicitly invoking the regularities of nature as per lion behavior. Okay. Will the future be like the past?
Uh,
Not
when
identical.
you
Will the
say okay,
future be? Okay.
like the
Yeah.
past, possibly,
Yeah. Okay. If you drop something right now, will it go to the ground?
uh, probably,
Is that what you think?
probably.
Do you
There's
think there's a
any
possibility? Do you think it's a possibility that if you let go of something right now, that it's going to float in the air?
Oh, okay. Now you're getting like anti gravity. You said fall on the ground. There's any variables that can stop it from hitting the ground?
Could you go back 2 sentences? My headset went out.
What happened?
Could you go back 2 sentences? My headset went out.
Okay, when you said when it hits the ground, the way I interpreted that was touching the floor. But there could be any
Okay,
number
let
of
me ask you a
variables.
question. Let me ask you a question. Right? If I offer to give you $1 million, right? I will give you $1 million if I let go of the ball and it floats. But if it doesn't float, you have to give me $50. You gonna take
Okay.
that bet? You gonna take that bet?
Uh, not really.
Okay. So your
I wouldn't take
$50,
I wouldn't take
right?
that bet because I don't know the
Okay. So the
any
point is, okay.
variables.
So the point is this. Okay. Do you believe in a world that is at its ground matter, energy, causality, and the regularity of nature, which then results in chemistry, physics, things like that? Okay.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So is the causal principle that there's a cause and effect between events, is that real?
I'm sorry, what was that? My mic cut off.
Is the causal principle that there's a cause and effect between events real?
I think so, yeah.
Good. And what makes it real?
Um, the only things that we can use to make it real are our five senses.
No, no, no. Your senses do not causally dictate the causal principle because then you would be God. Okay? But you don't believe in God. Now, I didn't ask you how you apprehend that causality is true. I want to know what imposes and sustains the principle of causality. Is there something that imposes it and sustains that?
Um, imposes and sustains that
Yeah,
causal effect.
let me rephrase the question. Do you believe that God, as the eternal creator of the world, where everything that exists that is not God derives and depends upon God, do you believe that the causal principle derives and depends upon God?
No.
Okay. Could you tell me what imposes and secures the realness of the causal principle?
Um, that's a that's like a metaphysical question, so it's not like
Do you have
like
sir,
go ahead.
everything we talk about is metaphysical in nature. There isn't anything that is not metaphysical in nature. If I talk about scratching my nose, that's within the context of metaphysics. Okay? Now, since you don't believe that God is what makes the causal principle real, and you believe the causal principle is real, what makes it real?
Let's see. Like I said, I mean, you say you answered that if I answer this, it would say that it would make the proclamation that I'm God,
What
but I
may
don't think that's
what
the case.
okay, do you have something that is identifiable and defensible that institutes and secures the causal principle?
Um, that's just a repeat of my answer to the previous question, the five senses. We can only determine what's real
Okay,
based on what we.
obviously you didn't understand the question, okay? Your response is that you use your five senses to, in some way and in some sense, apprehend causality. But your senses presupposes the actuality. Your senses do not impose and sustain the causal principle. Okay? Yeah. Are we clear on that?
Sure.
Okay. So in the world around us, you believe in the causal principle, that there's a cause and effect between event.
Okay.
Or you're going to believe one of two other things. One, that all events are spontaneous and are unconnected and unrelated to other events, or you'll believe that there's a mixture of the two. Okay? So you believe in the causal principle. Good. What institutes and secures its actuality, its realness? Since it's not God, what is it?
It's the same answer. I'm gonna give you the same answer.
Well,
You can't
why would you
affirm something is
listen,
real
hey
or not.
listen to me. Why would you repeat the answer three times when I've already given you a rebuttal to it when you did not offer a counter rebuttal?
Because the question is a loaded question.
Okay, what is a loaded question?
You're trying to formulate and move me to a
Okay,
specific answer.
Kodo. When people get cornered by their own beliefs, okay, and they get uncomfortable with a question that they either don't know how to answer or don't want to answer, they respond by saying, well, that's a loaded question. Well, let's see if my question is loaded, okay? I want you to explain to me in one sentence what is a loaded question.
A loaded question is a question where you're trying to get the individual who's trying to answer said question to answer in a specific manner that is advantageous to your argument.
That is false. That is not what a loaded question is. Okay. Do you understand that if I did do that, there's not a problem to that? Because as long as the question is legitimate, if I ask you a question and I expect you to answer it, and either way you answer it, it's an advantage to me in the discussion, that's not a problem. That's a problem for you. But there's nothing unethical or irrational about it. A loaded question is a question that contains either an explicit or implicit premise that is objectionable. Have you stopped beating your wife? Okay,
Okay.
that's a loaded question
Okay.
because it presupposes that you acknowledge that you were a wife beater. Now, suppose you told me that you had gotten into fisticuffs with your wife, right? And you beat her up a couple of times. And I came to you and I said, have you stopped beating your wife? Would that be a loaded question?
No, I can see. Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a loaded question contains a premise, explicit or implicit, that would otherwise be objectionable. And the premise is objectionable, not that the question is objectionable. So I didn't ask you a loaded question. I asked you what institutes the causal principle. What is the implicit premise that's objectionable to you?
Okay. So the implicit premise that's objectionable to me is that um you're trying to say that well, you're trying to affirm the cause and effect, what is real and how we determine if it's real or not. And
You
I
haven't
answer
identified. You haven't. No, no. You did not identify what the objectionable premise is. When you just responded, there was no identification of a premise that was objectionable. What is the premise that's objectionable? If I said to you, what makes the causal principle real? Okay.
and I
In that
answered
question, what is the premise inherent in that is objectionable?
you're the real aspect of it. When you say what makes it real,
Yeah.
that's what I'm objecting to.
Is the causal principle an illusion?
The causal principle only subsumes that human
Yeah,
aspect, the human variable.
dude. Can you be honest here right now? Can you be transparently honest, or are you going to try to play to the room, which no one in the room is going to be fooled right now by your rhetoric? Okay, listen carefully. If I ask you what makes the causal principle real, okay,
And I answered
no, the
humanity
answer.
and their five senses.
Okay, okay. Are you a teenager?
No,
Okay. So are you saying that humanities are gods and humanity institutes and secures causality? That when the sun emits photons, that human beings are gods making photons come out of the sun?
no,
Then your answer is wrong. You're talking about human beings either intuiting or using some rationale as to why causality is real. So humans don't institute and secure the actuality of causality, but we might agree for the sake of discussion that they might in some way apprehend that causality is real. I'm not asking you do we apprehend it? I'm saying what makes it real as opposed to it's an illusion. If I said to you we're walking in a desert and I say, "Wow, there's water over there. Look at that water right there." And I said, let's go. And you say, no, that's not water. That's a mirage. Okay. And I said, no, I can see it. It's water. You said, no, it's not real.
okay,
Okay. Now,
okay.
your position in your not God world is that the causal principle is real and that God did not institute and sustain the causal principle as creator. So I want to know what is it that institutes the causal principle? Either the causal principle is instituted and secured by something that is not itself, or you're going to have to claim that the causal principle is self contained and eternal without a beginning. Which is it?
Hey, can you explain what you mean by self-contained without a beginning?
Yeah, either a state of affairs is unconditionally non-dependent or not. And if it's not, it will depend or derive upon something. So the causal principle that you believe is global or universal either derives and depends upon something that is not itself, or the causal principle is eternal and self contained and unconditionally non dependent, non derivative. So is the causal principle derivative or not derivative?
It's if I'm understanding your question correctly, then it isn't derivative. It's not derivative of God.
Okay, I understand. You've already explained that you reject that. Is the causal principle derivative or not derivative? Is it dependent or not dependent?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that? Is it derivative or not derivative?
Is the causal principle dependent or not dependent? Derivative or not derivative?
But dependent on what? Is it just
Okay.
dependent?
Is the causal principle eternal without beginning?
It is determined. It has to have something to begin with.
Okay. So then the causal principle cannot explain itself. So what is it that institutes and secures the causal principle?
Wait, why wouldn't cause and effect be able to explain itself?
Because you just denied it.
When I say cause
Yeah,
and effect needs
dude,
to define
listen to
itself.
me. In all sincerity, okay, I'm really not trying to be a jerk. You're really not focusing on what I'm saying to you. You got to focus, okay? Now, if I say something you don't understand, you can stop me anytime and say, I don't understand. Can you please explain it? Okay. Now, either something is dependent or it's not dependent. If it's not dependent in any way, shape, or form, then it will be self contained. It'll be absolute within itself. It will not be
Mm.
contingent. It will be eternal.
Oh, okay. I see what you're going. Okay, but when you're using eternal, are you trying to reference God as that part of the eternal?
No, no. I am saying that something, and I'm not identifying any something. I'm just saying something is
Mm.
eternal if it does not begin, if it exists and it does not begin to exist. Okay. Now, is the causal principle, did it begin to exist or has it always existed?
Ah, okay. Now I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's always existed. Cause and effect has always existed.
Okay. Now, that's incoherent. When you want to know why?
And why would that be?
Okay. Because if cause and effect is eternal, then you would have an infinite regress of causal succession. Okay. Do you understand that before I
Causal
finish?
succession. Go ahead.
Do you
Like cause and
understand
effect,
that?
the succession of cause and effect.
Yeah. If the causal principle is eternal, then you would have an infinite regress of causal succession. Do you understand?
Okay, I kind of understand what you're saying.
Okay. Now, there's at least two problems with that. One, you cannot traverse an infinity. Okay. That's not coherent. Number two, if everything has a cause, there's an infinite causal succession, and everything has a cause.
Hmm.
If something is an effect of a cause, then the effect is of a second order as opposed to being of a primary order. Okay? So if there's an infinite regress of cause and effect, then everything is of a second order, but then nothing would be primary. So
Um.
everything would be of a second order, nothing would be primary. But if there's nothing that's primary, there can't be second order events. So an infinite regress is incoherent.
I think I would have to object with that second part.
You
What's the
can't. You
significance of
listen,
primary and
listen,
secondary?
listen to me. Okay, something is secondary is if it begins to exist.
If it
Okay,
begins to exist because of a primary cause.
that's right. Unless,
Okay.
of course, you want to accept the notion that anything begins to exist without a cause. But you see, you don't believe that. You've already told us. So
Mhm.
if everything has a cause, then everything is of a second order. But if everything is of a second order, nothing can be primary.
I don't think that could make sense because if everything is of a
Dude,
second
dude, listen
cause,
to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. I'm not trying to be mean here. You don't know what you're talking about.
you
Okay?
just made the
Something,
argument that
listen to me
if
carefully.
something or
Something,
primary.
listen carefully. Listen carefully. If anything is within the sequence of cause and effect, Okay. Whatever does not have a cause, or I should say, whatever has a cause is of a second order. Do you understand that?
Okay.
Right? Now, if something does not have a cause, but that whatever that is results in something else, then that thing is primary, resulting in a second order state.
Okay.
Now, if everything is of a second order, then nothing can be primary.
Who's
Okay?
making the assertion that everything is secondary?
You did.
No. I never
Yes.
made the assertion that everything
Okay,
is
dude,
secondary.
listen to me. Listen. You seem like a nice guy, right? But I have to tell you, you're ill informed.
You're
You told me there's an infinite regress of cause and effect. Okay? If there's an infinite regress of cause and effect, that means every event has a cause. So an event is of a second order, unless you want to believe that some events spontaneously come into existence without an antecedent. Do you know what an antecedent is?
no.
It means something that comes before something else.
Okay.
Your
So
mother and
that Go
father,
ahead.
your mother and father are antecedents to you,
Okay.
right? Now, um, if there's an infinite regress, there's no ultimate antecedent. So nothing would be primary. Everything would be of a second order. But if everything is of a second order, then nothing can be primary. This is not complicated logic. It's
It
a
seems a little bit odd because then you're making the assertion that there's nothing that could come after a second order or nothing
you're not
can
understood,
connect to a
dude.
second order.
Listen to me. I'm not using trick logic here. Okay. If something is primary, okay, it doesn't have an antecedent. Because if it did, it wouldn't be primary, it would be secondary. Okay? If something does not have an antecedent, then it's of a primary state. Primary meaning first.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, we've established this.
Right, right. Now, so something that's primary cannot have an antecedent. Okay? If something has an antecedent to it, then it can't be primary. It'll be secondary. Okay?
Wait. If something
Suppose we have, listen to me,
a
listen to
primary
me.
cannot have an antecedent,
Dude,
is
listen
what
to
you
me.
said.
Why? I'm going to ask you, I want a sincere answer, and I don't want you to play the room. Why are you arguing with me on this point when you know and I know that you do not know what you're talking about and I do? Why?
You're
Why are
just
you
making the
arguing with me?
assumption that you do.
Okay, I'm not okay.
You're very
Yeah,
strong in your stance. So,
you listen to me. Now what you're doing is you're not being transparent. Okay? You do not know what you are talking about. Okay? I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. You simply don't. You're just accustomed to dialoguing and disagreeing and maybe bickering. Now, you haven't really gotten to the point of bickering, but it's getting close.
Darth,
Listen
can I ask you a
okay,
carefully.
question?
No, please, Bart, please wait.
you've been consistently stonewalling me by every time I speak, you say, dude, or you
Because
don't know
you
what
are
you're talking about.
making numerous philosophical elementary blunders that you're not aware of. Okay? Now, the problem, why am I asking you these questions? Okay? Is because when you open up your mouth and you speak about the world, about how things are, you're talking about what is, what was, what can be, and cannot be. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what is it fundamentally that dictates that?
What dictates what will cannot be, and
What it listen to me. What dictates fundamentally, what dictates what is, can be, and cannot be?
um, I'd say we haven't been able, as humans, been able to discern the actual origin of what is, can, and cannot be.
Okay. So what you assert is shrouded in complete mystery then.
Um, yeah, if we're talking
Now
about the
here's the
dictate,
problem.
yes.
Here's the problem. If it's shrouded in ultimate mystery, then you can therefore not actually assert what is, can be, or cannot be because it will have no basis.
Yeah, I agree. We're not
Okay,
asserting.
now,
I've never
now, now,
asserted
listen,
a specific
listen
thing.
to me. If there is nothing dictating at a fundamental level, the most ultimate fundamental level, if
Okay.
there's nothing that is dictating, or I should say, instituting and securing what is, can be, or cannot be for any and all states of affairs, there's nothing identifiable. Then what that means then, and what I'm about to say is going to be irrefutable. You're not going to accept what I'm about to say, but I'm telling you ahead of time, it is irrefutable. If you cannot tell me what it is that dictates what is, can be, and cannot be, then whatever putative facts you invoke, they will be uninterpretable because there's no rhyme or reason why anything is happening. Now, do you know who Lawrence Krauss is?
No.
He's a famous atheist physicist. Okay. Been on the debate circus defending atheism. He's on documentaries. Okay. Some people like him, some don't. And he said, we don't need God. We don't need to appeal to supernatural woo woo. We can explain everything through the laws of nature. Now, do you agree with him?
Uh, if I'm just taking that specific sentence, not really.
Okay. So I had got the opportunity to speak with him. And I said, Dr. Krauss, what is it that is fundamental to everything that dictates and secures what is, can be, and cannot be? And he goes, I don't know. And then he got angry and he goes, why does it even matter? Because you told me we don't need to appeal to God as to what is fundamental, dictating what is, can be, and cannot be. But you told me God's not necessary, but you don't know what is ultimately necessary. And do you know when I questioned him on that, he no longer wanted to talk with me. Okay. This is a man who is in TV documentaries talking about physics, space, okay, a universe from nothing. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm questioning you is this: you think that you can do without God. But I've been
Correct.
questioning you about your worldview, and you have no answers as to why anything is.
I have no answers as to the origin of why
No,
everything
no,
is.
no, 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 sir. But you see, the issue isn't simply chronology, it's contemporary as well. Right now, at this very moment, what dictates what is, can be, and cannot be?
We still don't know.
Okay, so therefore, everything is uninterpretable.
Um, when you say everything, you mean everything that is at the
Every,
moment as well?
everything, everything will be uninterpretable because if you tell me that uh, Y exists because of X, and I say Y X, and you say because of W, and I say Y W, and you say, "Oh, I don't know," then everything it's connected to is I don't know. Okay? So your position results in catastrophic unintelligibility. Now, you're an atheist. Could you tell me why there is no God?
Um, I think it was a creation of man.
Okay. That's called the etymological fallacy. It wouldn't logically and necessarily follow if human reason was faulty and they concluded that there is a God. It wouldn't follow from that because there's faulty human reasoning that God doesn't exist. The only thing that would follow is that they had an incorrect rationale in concluding God. That's
That's
the etymological
yeah.
fallacy. Are we
Um.
clear? Are we clear on
Uh.
that?
I think so. I think you're saying what I
Okay.
want to say. Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
Do you understand the etymological fallacy?
Which is what you just explained.
It means that because the manner in which they reasoned to the conclusion, the reasoning was incorrect. Therefore, the conclusion is incorrect. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
that doesn't follow.
Why wouldn't that exactly follow?
Okay, suppose you and I go to a diner and I add up the check and I say, okay, I'll pay. All right,
Hmm.
and it comes out to $24.
Okay.
Now, suppose because I'm a math Nazi, I want to make sure that she added up the total. She's not padding the bill.
Hmm.
So I start adding up all of the stuff that we ate, and I added a $2 charge, in my mind. Okay, I added one by mistake, but then later on, as I'm going through the items, I accidentally, in adding up, deleted $2. So I added $2, I deleted $2, and then I total it to $24. My reasoning process was fallacious, but the conclusion was still correct. So when you say all gods are made up, it wouldn't matter that every single human beings on this planet's reasonings for God existing didn't add up. It wouldn't follow from that God doesn't exist. And you want to know something? The Encyclopedia Britannica has the atheist entry by atheist philosopher Kai Nielsen, who I think knows a little bit about atheism. Kai Nielsen said in one of his books, all of the reasons for God by humans may fail, but it still might be the case that God exists. So saying God does not exist because people use faulty human reasoning, that's a non sequitur. It's the etymological fallacy. Okay? So do you have any other rationale why there is no God?
Well, that's what I was explaining. So when I
No,
said
no.
there's when I say
What you
when you
just
ask me the
explained is a
question
fallacy.
when you ask me the question, do you believe there's no God? And I said, there's no God because of the human element. They're humans are
Oh,
naturally
so you're saying you're not okay, correct me if I'm wrong. You are not asserting there is no God. You're just saying
correct.
you're unconvinced.
So I'm yeah, correct. I'm a skeptic. Yeah, you asked me if I was a skeptic, right? Yeah.
Oh, okay, good, good, good. So this is typically what we see. What we see atheists doing is when they're confronted about rationally defending their atheism, they furiously backpedal to agnosticism. So is it your position that you're not denying the existence of God, you're just suspending judgment as per the proposition that God does or does not exist? You're suspending judgment on both propositions.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, in the English language, there's a single word. There's only one word in the English language that designates the denial of God. What would that word be?
Um, what? Atheist? Is
A what?
oh what? Atheist? The denial of God? Yes.
Oh, okay. Now, is there a single word in the English language which is used widespread to indicate those who withhold judgment from God about God's existence on it, that they suspend judgment about God's existence or non-existence? Is there a word in the English language that refers to that?
Yes. Wouldn't that be agnostic?
Right. But wait a minute. You're telling me you're an atheist, but the word atheist means the denial of God. But then you told me you're suspending judgment. Okay. But you just told me suspending judgment is an agnostic.
Well. You have to remember, I never said I was an atheist. You said
I
as an atheist, you posed a
I
question to me
I
as an
said,
atheist.
okay, so you're denying you're an atheist.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so we're going to deal with that now. Okay, now would do you know what the law of excluded middle is?
No, I do not.
Okay, it comes from the laws of logic. A equals A, law of identity. A cannot equal not A, the law of non contradiction, and the law of excluded middle. Something is either A or not A. We use these all the time in our reasonings every day. Okay, so the law of excluded middle says something is either A or not A. Okay,
Mhm.
now if we invoke a fact, uh, like the Statue of Liberty, right? Either the Statue of Liberty exists in the God world or not. Now, that statement is necessarily true. Okay? Either the Statue of Liberty exists in the God world or not. Okay? Do you accept that statement as true?
Either it exists or it
It's
doesn't
not a
exist.
trick
Okay, sure,
question.
sure.
Okay. So, a particular fact can only exist in one of two realms. Okay? A fact in question will either exist in the God world, and if not, the fact exists in the not God world. There's not a third option, right?
So are you saying that agnostic isn't a third option?
Now, listen to me. Focus on what I'm putting before you, okay? A fact in question, the Statue of Liberty, either exists in a not God world or not, which would mean the God world. Or I could put it in the reverse. Either the Statue of Liberty exists in the God world or not in the not God world. So there's not a third realm. There's not a middle ground. Either the Statue of Liberty exists in a God world or it exists in the not God world, right? Now, if somebody says there's a fact, but it doesn't derive from either realm, they would have no fact at all, would they?
If it has to exist between one or the other, and it doesn't exist in
Right.
either of them, then yeah.
We're not talking about what they know. We're just saying that the fact in question is not designated to derive from either one. Okay. Now, I ask you a simple question. I'm not asking you what you know, I'm asking what you believe. Do you believe that all the facts that you're acquainted with necessitate deriving and depending upon God? The-
No. If it's dependent
okay,
on God, then
so what other realm could your facts exist in?
wouldn't that be the non-God world?
That's right. So guess what? You're claiming to suspend judgment, but you're not, because what you do affirm logically commits you to the non-existence of God.
So then, are you suggesting we're incapable of changing our position?
No, sir. What I'm suggesting to you is you're claiming to suspend judgment about God, but you have decided that the actuality of facts are unworthy of attributing them to God. So you haven't suspended judgment about God. You have made a
Okay, I see what you're
decision.
saying.
You have made a decision that you can do without referencing the necessity of God, haven't you?
На свою голову.
Uh, wait.
Be quiet, Shredder. Have you
Sorry.
decided that you can do without referencing the necessity of God?
For the moment, yes.
Okay, that constitutes the denial of God.
I don't personally believe so. Like, if
Okay,
you
all right, well, okay.
strictly
Now,
definition-wise, then yeah.
sir, listen to me. Do you understand that if I say to you, if P, then Q,
Okay.
if you accept that, okay, if P, then Q, Q necessarily follows from P, right? If P, then Q, right? And if I say to you P, and you agree that P is real, then you have also affirmed indirectly Q. You understand? Okay? It's called modus ponens. Do you affirm that facts can be invoked as actual, real, without the necessity of referencing or deriving from God?
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. So if I say yes, and then that would that would affirm that there is no I believe there is no God, and therefore I would have to be atheist.
Do you believe that facts necessitate deriving or referencing the necessity of God? Do you believe that?
No.
Good. Then you believe that facts can exist without God.
Correct.
That is an indirect denial of the existence of God. You have not suspended judgment. You've decided that facts can be invoked without God.
So then what's the angle that you're going with that I can't
Well,
then
okay,
change?
so facts will either exist with dependency upon God or facts can exist without God. You've decided that facts can be invoked without God. That's what you believe.
Okay.
You're claiming to suspend judgment, but you haven't suspended judgment. You have decided that God, when you contemplate and consider facts, that facts do not necessitate referencing God as the ultimate precondition. That
That
you
there is
can
yeah,
do
that
that
there's not enough yet.
so you have decided that you can predicate, you can make statements and utter propositions without invoking God. Okay?
Correct.
Now, if your belief is true, then God cannot logically coexist in that world, and hence God would not exist.
Why
So
would that be
what
the
you
case?
because it logically and necessarily follows. That's why. God can only logically coexist with each and every fact that is not himself, if and only if they derive and depend upon him. In a world where facts do not necessitate deriving and depending upon God, God cannot logically coexist.
I
You have
don't
affirmed, you
necessarily
have,
believe that's the case.
okay, dude, obviously either you're being oppositional or this is going over your head. Now, you believe that facts can be invoked, statements and propositions can be invoked as viable without God, right?
Sure.
Then that what follows from that necessarily, God cannot logically coexist if that belief is true.
Why would that be the case?
Because in a God world, no propositions or statements can do without God.
So
Ever.
you're saying every single one has to be
Okay,
uh
because God is defined, okay? I'm not defining God into existence. God is defined as the source and the basis of why any facts at all exist.
mhm.
And so if I say to you that the ballpoint pen I'm holding in my hand, in spite of the fact that it was reformulated from stuff that man dug up, this is a created fact. And a created fact necessarily implies that God exists.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, if it's an uncreated fact, that necessarily implies that God does not exist. I could reword it and say that the molecules that make up this pen necessitate deriving and depending upon God. That, or they necessarily imply God. Okay. Now, that would be me indirectly affirming the existence of God. Now, if I said the opposite, it would be necessitating God does not exist. You believe that facts do not, excuse me, do not necessitate referencing God. You can make statements about the world without God as the precondition. And if your belief is true then God cannot exist. Okay? So
Again,
is your
I have to
belief
disagree.
true? Is your belief true that any and all propositions can invoked as real and true without the necessity of referencing God?
So now that you said any and all, then no.
Oh, okay. So then what would follow from that is that God would exist then.
I would have to disagree.
Okay, you're not understanding.
I'm understanding where you're
There's
going.
only
There's
listen
only
to me
2 you're
carefully.
saying that
Listen to
there's
me.
2
You're
choices.
not understanding, sir. I'm not trying to browbeat you. You are not understanding. In a God world, do all facts that are not God necessitate deriving from God?
You said in a what, knockout world?
No, I said in a God world, would all facts that are not God necessitate deriving from God?
Yes.
Okay. In a not God world, would all facts not necessitate God?
Uh, sure. And if yeah, you're
Right.
assuming that the not
Now,
God world is confirmed to not have a God, though.
yeah, okay. For somebody who's so opinionated, especially about moral issues, I'm giving you basic metaphysical issues and you're falling all over this. I'm not giving you trick logic here. I'm not giving you mental gymnastics. I'm giving you basic logic, modus ponens, if P, therefore Q. Okay? Now, if a fact depends upon God, then God exists. If a fact does not depend upon God, then God does not exist. If the fact is true in either case, if a fact is true and this true fact depends upon God, then God exists. If a fact is true, but it does not depend upon God ultimately, then God does not exist. Are we clear?
Isn't that just an antecedent
Are we
fallacy?
listen to me. Are we clear?
Sure, but that's
Okay,
that's an antecedent fallacy, though.
now, if I affirm P, then Q follows, right?
Sure. That's a fallacy.
Good. So what's that?
That's a fallacy.
What's a
That's the
fallacy?
that's denying the antecedent fallacy. If P then Q,
Okay,
therefore Q
hold
then
on,
P.
hold on a second. If you lie to me right now, if you lie to me, I'm not only going to mute you, I'm going to ban you from this room. Okay?
I'm
Now,
not hurt by that, so you
now,
can do what
now,
you want.
now, who just sent that to you in a DM?
Nothing, I just Googled it.
Okay, all right. Okay, you're a liar. Good, but you're now banned. Okay? He's a liar.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me ban this liar. Okay?
What did he say? It was a fallacy. What fallacy did he say?
Did you ban him yet?
He said it was denying the antecedent. Okay?
Okay.
All I was just simply saying is, if a fact depends upon God necessarily, then God exists. If a fact necessarily does not depend upon God, then God does not exist. There's no fallacy there. Okay? If we say that a fact is true, right? And then we say that this fact that is true necessarily derives from God, then God exists. Okay? Because it's not like we're saying if it is raining outside, the street will be wet. Okay? Since the street is wet, okay, therefore it's raining. That would be affirming the consequent. Okay?
hmm
That would be bad logic. Okay? So what we're talking about is that the fact in question only has one necessary conclusion, excuse me, not I should say conclusion. The fact in question that we're invoking, any fact at all, either necessarily implies God or necessarily does not. We could say the same thing about water on the street. We could say it either necessarily implies that it was raining or it does not necessarily imply that it's raining. Okay?
I get you. I got you.
Darth, quick question. Um, what do you think about those who say that there can be a simultaneous cause and effect?
It's an interesting uh, thought experiment,
Mhm.
but can they give me an example of such?
When we refer, how about when Christians like refer to the beginning of the universe, God instantiate?
Your voice sounds familiar. What's your previous screen name?
Yeah, it's Valerian. I have talked to you on Clubhouse too.
Okay.
I've used this for a while.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we talk about the beginning of the universe, can't we say it's a simultaneous cause and effect?
I wouldn't because I'm a Christian.
Oh no. So how do we get away from that? Because I'm Christian too. I'm trying to figure out how to get away from that though.
Get away
Because
from what?
so how do we say God from eternity past instantiated the universe?
Why? Because creation doesn't have to be simultaneous with its existence. You might want to affirm that, but it doesn't necessitate that it is.
Okay.
So, for example, Rich Mullins, who is a biblical theologian and a philosopher, says God can just be an example of just something that is enduring, right? God himself can exemplify time, that it's just enduring.
Hmm.
He continues to exist. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, this is not something that I've studied enough of in terms of his writings. The guy's
Hmm.
really he's quite brilliant. Okay, when it comes to the issue of time, but um, look, there's a lot of sophism floating around. Okay,
Hmm.
not that I myself am perfect in the way that I articulate things. Everybody can make a faux pas, right? But there's a lot of sophism going around, especially among the atheists, because they don't give a shit about whether what they're saying is sound reasoning or not, as long as it sounds good. Just like this guy here today. Okay. And by the way, Kodo, bye bye. I told you I was going to ban you if you lied to me. Okay. He didn't know what the heck, he didn't even understand the basics of what I was even talking about. And then suddenly, out of the blue, he talks about denying the antecedent. I wasn't making an argument. I was saying either A or not A.
I think he
Either
was just being too egotistic or like egoistic to tell you when he doesn't know. You know, like what
he
he
would look,
doesn't know.
look, I'm not trying to be mean. He was a deer in the headlights, and he wasn't even willing to humble himself to say, "Oh well, I haven't really thought about stuff that way, and I just don't understand it."
Exactly.
One one minute he denies God's existence, the next minute he says, "Oh, I'm suspending judgment." I'm trying to explain to him that if you affirm that facts can do without the necessity of referencing the necessity of God, you have denied the existence of God implicitly. It's a necessary implication. Okay? If I say facts that are real and true cannot do without the necessity of